Hola, everyone. So, again, we are still building up our way to solving an equation by completing the square. So, we did a nifty activity where you guys figured out the magical formula that forces a quadratic to become a perfect square trinomial. So, what that means is that this b over 2 squared will make the quadratic. After you factor, it'll make it have the same factor repeat twice, which means it's a perfect square. So b over 2 squared every single time. If you do this to your quadratic, it will force it, whether or not it wants to be, it will force it to be a perfect square trinomial, and you will get a lovely binomial squared as your answer when you get done. So it's kind of neat because it sets you up to be able to solve your equation like what we were doing in the first two example problems. Okay, so let's get started on example 3. Sorry guys, I accidentally unplugged my document camera. Sorry, this is totally my fault. Let's see if I can get it to work. Sorry, you guys. Be mad at me. Be mad at me. It's going to work, though. You just have to be patient. There we go. Looks like it's going to work. Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry, guys. I did not mean for that to happen. Okay, but anyways, let's keep going. So, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to show you how you can use the b over 2 squared to end up making your quadratic be a perfect square trinomial. I'm going to check one thing real quickly. Okay, we're good. Okay, just making sure nothing else messed up. Okay, well, let's continue on. So again, we will be completing, I call it the perfect square. A lot of people just call it completing the square. When we do b over 2 squared, it will force our quadratic to become a perfect square trinomial, which means our final answer will be a binomial squared if we did it right. So every single time, if you complete the b over 2 squared formula, that's what will happen to your equation, which is pretty neat. Okay, well, let's get going, you guys. So, this is my formula. We're trying to find the magical number that will force this current quadratic to become a perfect square trinomial, which again, I know is a quadratic because its highest exponent is a 2. Okay, so let's do this b over 2 squared thing. Okay, so my b term is the number in front of the x, which is 18. Okay, 18 over 2 is 9. And 9 squared equals 81. Yay, so the magical number that will make this thing be a perfect square trinomial is 81. So I'm going to write this as 81. Okay, so what we're going to do from here, we are going to be factoring this trinomial. And if we did it right, we should end up with the same factor repeating at the end, which means you can rewrite it as a squared. Okay, and let's see here. It looks like my paper's crooked. Let's see if I can fix that. It's kind of better. Okay, sorry guys, I'm having a lot of technical problems today. Anyways, let's get going. So, the first thing, I need to identify the A, B, and C, which A is the number in front of the x squared. So A is secretly a 1 since I don't see anything. B is going to be the number in front of the x, which is 18. And C is the number that we just found when we did our nifty formula, B over 2 squared, which is 81. Okay, so again, we have 3 terms. Okay, we have a quadratic, which means we'll be sliding and dividing. So I'm going to slide my A to my C. So 1 times 81 is 81. So this is my A times C, so AC. And then my B term is 18. Okay, so I'm trying to find two numbers that multiply to be 81, which 81 is a positive. And we know a positive times a positive or a positive times a negative, a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative will give us a positive. And since I'm adding to be positive 18, that means I need two positives. So I need two positives that will multiply to be 81 and we'll add to be 18. So let's see here. Okay, so some numbers that I know will work. Let's see. All right, well, I know 1 and 81 works. Let's see if that works. So 1 times 81 is 81, but 1 plus 81 is not 18, it's 82. Shucks, that one didn't work. Well, something else that I know multiplies by 81, there's lots of things, but I think I've already figured it out. I think I've gotten better at this. The two numbers that I'm thinking about that I know will work is 9 and 9. Look at that. Okay, 9 times 9 is 81, and 9 plus 9 is 18. Holy hot dog, right? Okay, so I'm going to bring these numbers on down. So bring it on down. So I'm going to add 9. I'm going to add 9. Now, don't forget, it's slide and divide, which if you see, Miss Long already forgot to divide. So we slide by the A, which was 1, which means I need to divide by A, which is 1. Okay, so 9 over 1, well, that will reduce down to, oh, what am I doing? Sorry, guys. Ah. 9 over 1 will be a positive 9, and 9 over 1 will be a positive 9. Do you guys see that we ended up with a repeating factor? Do you guys see that? Okay, so that b over 2 squared should force your equation to repeat like that, which means I can now write my answer as x plus 9 times x plus 9 is equivalent to x plus 9 quantity squared. So I can rewrite this as a binomial squared. Okay, so this b over 2 squared forced this to turn into x plus 9 squared, which if you guys see, if this were to equal something, then I would solve using the square root property because I would have to square root both sides. So it's kind of setting you up to solve like we did in example 1 and 2. So you're kind of starting to see, hopefully, how these things are tying together. Now, I'm going to teach you guys real quickly a shortcut so you don't have to do all this work. Okay, so this only works, first of all, this only works when you complete the square. When you guys do this b over 2 squared, that is the magical number that will transform this quadratic into a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so you guys can only do this if you do the b over 2 squared. If you don't do b over 2 squared, then you can't do this, so be careful. Okay, so I want you guys to look at this real quickly. I want you to look at the perfect square trinomial, and I want you to look down here. Okay, so I'm going to actually rewrite it. So we're looking at this x squared plus 18x plus 81. Okay, now do you guys see a way or something I could do to this equation to get x and 9? Do you guys see something I can do to like the first term and the last term to get the x and 9? Do you guys see it? Holy hot dog, you guys see it. Okay, if you guys see here, if I square root the first and last term, the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 81 is 9. Okay, so if you do b over 2 squared, if you square root the first and last term, you will get the answers in this parenthesis, which is really cool. Also, something to keep in mind, where this plus sign comes from is the middle term, okay, the second term. Okay, so what you're going to do, you're going to square root the first and last term to get the numbers, but the sign is going to come from the sign of your second term. So if that's a plus sign, then that will be a plus sign. If this happened to be a minus sign, then that's going to be a minus sign. Okay, so if you don't want to sit here and factor, which I know you guys love to factor, but if you don't want to do that, you can do this shortcut, which down here, I'm going to be performing the shortcut because mathematicians like to do things quickly. Okay, so that is what is going on behind the scenes, but if you like the shortcut, I will now show you from here on out how to use the shortcut. But don't forget, you can only do this if you complete the square. If you do b over 2 squared, that's when you're allowed to do this. So just be careful. You can only do this when you do b over 2 squared. Okay, well, let's do the shortcut in example 4 and 5 now.